Hello, Montgomery County, and welcome to Talking EdTech with MCIU. My name is Brandon Langer, and I'm the Program Administrator for Instructional Technology in the Office of Organizational and Professional Learning. And in this series, we get to meet with a variety of different content providers, program vendors, thought leaders. This is a great series to just kind of dive into EdTech and see what's going on in the landscape. And we're very excited today to be meeting with who is a new MCIU partner and also PAIU partner, and that is a platform called ParentSquare. And if you're unfamiliar, I'm really excited to show this today because this was actually fairly new to me in the last 5-6 months, and they just have so much to offer districts with strategic communications. And I'm very grateful to be joined today by Amy Serrano. So welcome, Amy, and thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited. I hate to admit, 28 years in ed tech experience. So a lot in assessment, data analytics, and communication. So I'm really thrilled to share our partnership with the PAIU group, especially with Montgomery IU. So looking forward to today.
Yeah, and I think the thing that really you came out and did a presentation for a whole group of, I call them the me's across Pennsylvania, the others that are in kind of this ed tech field in the IU system. And I was gaining familiarity with ParentSquare as a company. And in our conversations, one of the things that you brought to my attention is one of the things that's really driving you is this idea that we can consolidate communication and make it more effective. And I think that your platform does that really well. So I'm excited to take a look at that in a minute. But as we kind of look at the current landscape of communications in schools, one of the things that really stands out about it is how you take these different stakeholder groups and really bring them together. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And how do we make it easier for stakeholders to communicate using ParentSquare?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head. And we hear it from districts. It was why we were formed. I think it's interesting to hear, how did we get started? Our founder was from WebEx with Citrix, right? And she put her kids in school, and she was completely overwhelmed by all the communication tools she was bombarded with. And so if you think about, from a parent lens, if I have kids at the high school, maybe a couple kids at the middle school, maybe even one at the elementary, all those schools, even within that district, could be using different communication tools. So I have all these different apps. The district has the website, district might have a tool. So that's what she experienced. And she thought, I think I can solve this. And we call it the app puzzle, right? We even have an exercise where you can go down and mark all the different apps or tools or products you've bought for communication and family engagement and think about how to consolidate them. But the thing that she really thinks about, and she really drives all of us to talk about, yes, parents are in our thoughts, and it's how do we make it easy for them, especially right with parent engagement. If you can get them engaged, you're going to see your student outcomes and your student achievement increase. So that's first and foremost. But also stepping back and thinking about your district tech teams. It's really hard to support all of those tools that you have going on for communication and making sure even your data is secure, right? Some of those free apps and what's going on with your data. But also for district administrators that are in the communication realm, it's how are we consistent with our messaging or our frequency with our messaging, or not overwhelming people if we don't have a unified platform to do that. And then finally for teachers, right? It's not easy to teach, right? Especially right now, it's crazy. It's really hard. So how do we give them one place to have that two-way communication with parents and build trust and build a community within their classroom? And especially with parents that might speak other languages at home. So that's what we're trying to solve. That's what we're trying to do. And I think we're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, I think so too. And as you were talking through the different groups there, I think what's interesting is I'm lucky enough to be a person that has experienced every seat you're talking about. Currently, I am an administrator, right? And I know what it means to have to communicate from an administrator's lens. I was a teacher for 12 years. I understand that lens. And I'm currently a parent living exactly what you're, as you said, your founder was dealing with, which is just that it doesn't even matter if they're in different schools. Different teachers even have different methods at which they like to communicate with their parents. And so you learn this teacher's method and you kind of get used to that. And then the next year you get a new teacher in the elementary program and they do it just ever so slightly different. And inevitably, it also breeds some comparison, which might not be fair. It's where that teacher's finding themselves to be successful. And what you guys provide is, as you kind of described, a little bit more uniform and systematic approach that can be accessed in different means, but also be pushed out in a uniform way. And I think that just leads for a more unified experience for the parent. And I guess my second question before we kind of dive and take a look at the platform here is just, what is that parent experience like? You know, what are they saying? What do parents tend to like about what you guys provide as a service?
Yeah, and I'm so glad you asked that, because we are unified. We talk about unified, and I'll show you. Okay, well, what exactly does that mean, right? Sometimes different words mean different things for different people. So we'll talk about that. But when we think about the parent, yeah, we're trying to consolidate communication, focusing on family engagement, but we really try to think of the different types of parents. So it could be a parent that's working 2 jobs just to get by, right? And they're completely overwhelmed, or a parent that speaks another language in the home. So when we're designing it, we're thinking about all those ways, different types of parent. It's not just a parent. It's,
Mhm.
well, what about these different types of parents, and how do we make it easy for them? And one of the ways to do that is making sure that we hit all the different modalities of communication. So phone, email, text, app, on those critical alerts, and we'll dig into them. You have to get them to everybody, right? It needs to go out in all 4 modalities. You have to ensure they know there's a critical issue. But some of that other communication, parents might prefer text, especially our ELL families, right? Research shows they would rather prefer to interact with text than they would with an email. But giving parents that choice on what type of modality they lean toward, which one's best for their family, but ensuring that they're getting the same information as somebody that maybe chooses a different modality. But when we talk all in one, it kind of has 2 sides. It talks about all in one with all those modalities, but then also all in one, meaning unified in the way that a district can communicate in one platform.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So let's go ahead and share screen and kind of take a look.
Okay, good. And this is that challenge I was talking about, right? Some of you could look at these and say, oh my gosh, we use this and this and this, or I think our teachers use this, but maybe it's the free component. So this really is, okay, how can we consolidate some of these and use one platform within ParentSquare? This really summarizes what ParentSquare does and why we're different. Those mass communications, everybody's been doing them for years, right? Even way back when I was a kid, right? Hey, there's something going on at the school. There's a lockdown. There's a snow day. We're closed, whatever. We absolutely do those. But again, the 4 modalities. So it's really important. We add another layer to them too, and we call them smart alerts, where you can break it up and maybe address a certain group, and maybe not in all 4 modalities. Maybe you just want to send a text and an email because most of the time folks aren't picking up their phone, right? They're at work, they're in meetings. So having the ability to kind of customize those mass alerts. But then in the middle, when you look at classroom communications, this is really where you're probably honing in on your research, right? And thinking about, how does 2-way communication at the classroom level impact student outcomes and impact student achievement? A lot of research is even saying that it has a bigger impact even than socioeconomic status. So we're really big on that and making sure that it's translated in the parent's home language automatically. But there are other great things that teachers do, and they try to communicate too, like all of those events they have going on in the classroom, or field trips, or documentation. So making it easy for parents to sign up, to volunteer, to share that information with the teacher at the classroom level.
So a couple of these things would have been so useful for me as a teacher. I was a music teacher, and the permission slips, the forms, which I think you were just about to talk about. But even just the involvement, the signups, that piece of it being looped in as part of communications, right? So we're not just pushing out, we're also pulling back in. That 2-way is really important.
Thank you. And when we go back, how do we make this easy for parents, right? We're all about, how do we make easy for parents and teachers, but for me to be able to electronically sign a permission
Mhm.
slip or note, yes, please include lunch on the field trip. I don't have to call anybody. I can just do it right there in ParentSquare. But the school services piece, I think of it as the backpack piece. You think about all those things we used to send home and we kind of cross our fingers that it came back signed, or dinner wasn't kind of smudged on it, right? So your permission slips, your surveys, your polls, even involving community groups like your alumni or different businesses that really support your district. Well, how do we get them more involved in the community and in their engagement efforts? We'll talk about secure documents because this is kind of game changing too. I was really surprised when I moved into the communication realm at how many districts still are stuffing packets and mailing them, right? And all the time and the money. So all that secure information that you're sending parents, like transcripts, graduation announcements, maybe ELL or special ed placement, different types of report cards, progress reports. You can do that all electronically through ParentSquare, and you even know who viewed it and who received it. The other piece, and this is kind of new, but I would stand up with districts and say, we're all things family engagement, all things communication. And then there would be somebody really smart in the back of the room that would say, well, what about websites? And I would say, well, except for websites. But over the last few months, we have just released our website module. So you can absolutely do your websites through ParentSquare. But if you don't, that's fine. We know it's important to push communication through Facebook, through Twitter, through your website. So we have that capability too if you're using a different website platform.
You mentioned a couple of things there. Number one, we're not just talking about traditional messaging, we're talking about comprehensive messaging and communications, and the documents maybe even that go along with it was the piece that stood out to me. And secondly, you just mentioned something in passing there, but it's really important. The ability to see who actually touched this communication or who responded to, and even just something as simple as, a report card not getting lost because maybe the child didn't want the parent to see the report card or whatever, comes to mind. I may or may not have done that once. But the point being that you have an insight into data about how that communication is being received and interacted with. And I'm assuming that then translates into a dashboard or an ability to kind of see that at a larger level too.
Yeah, absolutely. We can dig into it. And and we talk communication, right? We get into communicate, and I do like to think, yes, we have to communicate, but the ultimate goal is engagement, right? It's that family engagement piece. So you have to have the analytics to see, well, what's impacting. And I like the PTA, National PTA organization, put out a rubric so that you could measure, well, what do you mean by engagement? Where are we in our journey, and how can we use this rubric? But it was simple things like, okay, you put an engagement plan in process, or maybe a unified platform, and how do your volunteer hours change, right? That's a measure that you could use. But within ParentSquare, you can track all your volunteer hours. You can request volunteers to come into your classrooms and into your school community. So I know I talk a lot about communication because that's like the nitty gritty, but in whole, it's the family engagement component. That how are we moving the needle? So ultimately, we're moving the needle on student achievement and outcomes.
So I'm wondering, is it possible for us to take a look at the platform itself, like in a live environment? Because I think the one thing is, if I'm sitting and listening to this, one thing that might be, it might sound overwhelming if you haven't ever seen a platform like this or this particular platform. And I think this is the second piece I mentioned before, that the documents, that the way that it does more than just one thing in the areas of communication was the first thing that was impressive. The second thing to me was also just how simple and familiar this felt when you were demoing it for all of us. So I'd love to take a look.
And I'm logged in as an administrator, but what's nice, this is the exact same look that a parent would have, or a teacher, or a counselor, or the MTSS director, or the chess club leader. So it all has the exact same look and feel. And over here are the 3 ways that I communicate: those posts, those messages, and then the alerts if I have that permission, right? If I'm a district administrator or a school administrator to send those out. But the really important piece is right here in the middle of the post. And you think about that, that's where you're going to spend the most of the time. That's really where you're sharing most of the information, whether with your classroom, with the school, with your group, or across the district. And it's your updates, your announcements, your requests for information from parents. And I like to steal examples from other districts, right? They're the best. They know how to do this. But it could be end of year conferences here. It could be, as a teacher, I'm sharing that weekly recap of what we did this week, and then some ideas for parents to use to further their students' learning at home. I was just talking with Harrisburg, and they do positive parenting seminars. Well, it's a great way to share information here in ParentSquare, but you can even, as a parent, when I'm looking at this on my app or on the web interface, or I get that text and I click the link, I can add it right to my personal calendar. So keeping organized, right? And if the district's asking for RSVPs, I can go ahead and RSVP right here as a parent. But for a district, think about it. You put on these events and there's always that anxiety, like, are people going to show? Or are too many people going to show? We're not prepared. But right here, you know exactly who's coming, or if you need to push out a little more communication to get them excited. Same thing with Erie, right? They're having community nights. They wanted folks to come. They shared information. And then at their high school, they're even doing an EMT summer training program. Same thing. They wanted to get an idea of how many people are going to come to the information night regarding this. And right here, I give an example of a media release form. Okay. This is a great, remember when I talked about backpack service type things? Now, you probably wouldn't need a media release form at a community event, but I use this as an example.
Hey, we can't,
right here.
It's good to know. Yep.
Any type of form, though. Immunization records, or I think Erie's also doing a dental, and parents had to update information regarding some dental appointments that students have. But as a parent, I can just upload that right here, or I could e-sign it or provide my consent right in the form. And then as a district, I have all of that recorded. And you know what, maybe I'll use an example as a field trip when we think about for teachers, because those are difficult, right? Not just the stress of them, but the logistics. So here's another really good example. And I think it illustrates all those backpack services. And when we talk about making it easy and unified, we're having a third grade field trip. So parents get the notification, they can put it on their personal calendar, they can RSVP. Just like any good communication, we kind of want to include maybe a video or some images to get folks excited. But right here, the parent can fill out the form to provide consent for their student to attend. They can even comment on food allergies or anything that we've asked special questions regarding. And then you can even ask for items. So in this case, hey, parents, could you bring water or snacks? Parent can sign up and they'll get a reminder. We can ask for volunteers. Parent can sign up, they'll get a reminder. Don't forget you signed up to be a volunteer. But see how easy it was to compile all that information, but really easy for the parent to go ahead and do that on the app, do it online, or get the text and click the link and do all of these things.
Well, and as on the teacher side of what that's doing for them, it's also helping keep track of where they are in the management of such an event. And it's not just enough sometimes to RSVP. It's great to know who's coming, but then, you know, you have a side spreadsheet running of all the other parts that you're trying to keep going here. It looks like you could consolidate a lot of that with the event itself, just in the mode in which it was communicated. And then I also like what's being modeled here is that we're seeing events, we're seeing communications that aren't just underlined blue text, which is what a lot of emails turn into, is just a laundry list of links. And is anybody actually clicking on those? I mean, if there's hundreds of them, probably not. So this is modeling the interaction that people expect to see now in the modern internet, which is graphics, videos, you know, summarized information, which is how we read social media, how we read the internet now. It's just a much more familiar, like I said, familiar use of the internet and a communications platform.
It's meeting people where they are, right? That this is how they want to ingest their information, and we need to do that to engage them to help our kids. So here, newsletters too. Think about all the time you spend drafting newsletters. You can absolutely do that within ParentSquare, and think about the consistency. I know that's really important for our comms team. How are we being consistent in our messaging? You can have templates for your newsletters. Maybe one school has a specific look, another school a different, and then as opposed to the district. But you have all those templates. So you can just grab them in every month, include your information, and then send them out. The other thing I'll mention, and this comes up all the time when I work with districts, right? And it's always surprising the things that that are, you just don't expect them to make such a big impact. But the groups feature. So even though I'm looking across the whole school as an administrator, as a district, think about when I log in as a parent, that we started our conversation around, you know, I might have a student at the high school, I might have a couple at the middle school, maybe one at the elementary, and it's, well, how do I navigate through the communication that's occurring, or the events that are occurring at those specific locations? So with our groups, parents are automatically tied to those different classrooms or different schools, and they can hop around. They can also, like I mentioned, maybe their student's part of the chess club, so they can go right to the information that's tied to the chess club. Or maybe they access the Family Resource Center, so they're involved in that group and they can see all the resources that are being provided. When I say there's some things that come up that I didn't think of, and then when you start to talk to districts, it's even internally. So you might have internal groups just for your MTSS or your instructional coaches. And it's a place where you're sharing information about some of the key topics in the district that you're doing PD around, or you want to share resources. You can do that even internally by having those particular groups. Maybe it's your PD groups or your volunteer groups or so on. So just a nice kind of nugget that I didn't think of how folks would use ParentSquare, but it comes up every single time.
Mm-hmm. And that calendar, yeah, you showed how you can download an event if it's like the information is attached in the announcement or the post. Does that calendar sync? I guess my question is, how do we create those calendars? Is it created in ParentSquare and then delivered out, or does it grab it from other calendar sources?
It grabs it from iCal, or if you have a Google Calendar. And again, it's those little things. Think about parents that are trying to organize calendars from the chess club, from one school, another school, the district calendar. Here, all of those are consolidated. So I can see all of them in one, or when I go to that individual group, I can see the calendar for that. But yeah, really easy to add as an administrator or as a teacher. I can link it to my Google Calendar or to my iCal calendar. Great for athletics too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. I mean, there are a lot of events going on in a district. So how can we make it easy for people to engage in them?
Yeah. And even the way to categorize it. I mean, sometimes even when you're looking for something on a district calendar on the website, it's just kind of every event ever listed there, including every sporting event. So the ability to filter by the ones that pertain to you and your family is also a nice little bonus or use that would naturally happen as part of it being categorized through here.
Absolutely.
Is there any, you probably don't have it, but you were talking about like kind of that analytics and that dashboard side. Would anything populate here for us to take a look at, or no?
You know what? And that's a really good point. And I know we're going to get into looking at it holistically, but you'll notice these notification eyeballs here. Yes, you can look at your analytics across all of ParentSquare, right? And it's going to give you some information on what's resonating with your community or who you're missing. But also on each of these individual posts, I'm trying to find one. Here we go. You'll see that eyeball. I can even look at the analytics for each individual post. So I can see who are the total recipients, who's mostly receiving the communication via email versus text. So we're going to talk in a second about kind of the macro level of looking at our analytics, but absolutely you can even go down into the micro level and looking at individual posts and how they performed. It's kind of nice when a parent calls and says, hey, I didn't get that, or I think I missed this. They can absolutely search. You can show them how to do that, but you can also dig into that individual post and see, well, no, actually you did. Let me show you maybe how you missed it.
Mhm.
Great question there. The other thing I'll point out, especially for our families that are serving students and families that speak other languages, anything I type as I develop this post is going to translate into 125 languages automatically. So you can be assured that communication they get, the first communication they get out of ParentSquare from your district is going to be in their home language. So anything you type here automatically translated. Now, if you bring in an image, right, or a PDF, that's not right. We can't translate those automatically. But if you're typing them as you build the post, that's going to translate for those parents.
So if we take a look at that macro level, that big high level with the analytics, with looking at usage of the platform, you mentioned something in our last conversation about you used the term accountability dashboards. What exactly do you mean by that?
Sure. And I think I'm leaning heavily too on my assessment data
Yeah.
analytics, right? But it kind of is. And I think of it this way, in instruction, we always talk all means all, right? All means all. We have to reach all kids. We've got to move the needle for all kids. I think it makes sense to say the same thing for family engagement. We have to engage all families, not just some, not the ones that are easy to reach and always show up. So how do we know that we're doing that? So if we look here at our admin dashboard, there's two parts. All means all, but also, I talk about how do we make this easy? How do we make this easy? But also, how do we make sure our efforts are working? Because I think our teachers, our administrators, they work really hard. Their hearts are in the right place. They want to move the needle for kids, but sometimes it's, well, is it working? How do I know what I'm doing? I need that validation. And that's where you can see this here. This tells me exactly where's our contactability. Are we reaching 100% of our families? I have a number, that's great, but I can even dig into it further and see, okay, which ones am I not reaching and why? Is it because I don't have contact information in our SIS data that's coming into ParentSquare every night? Or is it I don't have maybe a parent contact tied to a particular student? So we'll help you dig into exactly where you need to clean up some of your data. But what's really interesting is I might be at 91% today. Tomorrow, I could be at 85% because a parent changed jobs and they got a new email or they got a new phone number and they haven't updated us. So it's nice to know that this is ongoing to ensure that I'm always at that high contactability rate. There's some other really good information too. It kind of explains, well, how are we reaching our families? Do they gravitate more toward the app or is it via email versus text? And then we haven't dug into direct messaging. And it's really the power of ParentSquare because you're coupling those backpack and those school services with the direct communication. But all my districts to this number here. Here are all the features in ParentSquare that you can use. But if you see that direct messaging number way up there, that tells me that my teachers are communicating one-on-one back and forth with parents in their home language. They might be including counselors or the MTSS directors in that communication too, all those people that are supporting kids to make an impact down at the classroom level. So I always look here. Another thing, if we're looking at the data historically, I mentioned, right, that PTA rubric, right? How do we know we're making an impact or what we're saying is resonating? Here, you can even see your most popular posts. So which ones were appreciated most by your community members? And then also which were commented on. So this gives you an idea of where do we go? What does our community embrace? What do they like to hear from us? I do caution because every time somebody's like, oh, comments, right? We all have PTSD from social media a little bit. You can turn comments on or off in ParentSquare. So you could have comments on a certain post, but not on another. And the person that made the post is the only one that sees the comments. So that's kind of nice, right? We want to put some guardrails on that piece. But that's what I mean by analytics, even digging into professional development. So, I post a lot, Lewis, not so much. Maybe we could partner together, right, to provide some professional development for Lewis or for Ben. Or maybe there's a discussion with Amy about, hey, you're oversharing. You're communicating too much. It could be overwhelming for your parents, and they start to tune out. So just these little nuggets give you a lot of insight into where your communication is landing.
Yep, and I think it also gives a leader a look into something that maybe historically they didn't have. We're not looking at the individual communications from this lens. We could, if we wanted to, right? We could go see what the posts were, but this is the higher level where you have a look and feel about how communication is flowing in and out of your system. You don't have time to do that with email. You don't have the ability to do it with text messaging, right? And it's not that we're so worried about micromanaging every little message going out. It's that, are we communicating? Are we engaging in the digital landscape, using digital tools effectively? And you highlighted a couple different instances where you could very quickly see whether that might be yes or no. And again, not that you want to go call someone up, but that probably means that if there's a need, you're seeing a hole somewhere, great, let's work to address and fix that part of it, because these other parts are going really well. And that, is really all. Some people get really intimidated by data informed terms like data informed instruction or data informed operation. And it shouldn't be that way. It's really just to identify where your needs are. And this helps do that very quickly.
Thank you. I'm glad you, yeah. Sometimes do you think we make it a little harder than it has? It's just, hey, here's a piece of data and here's how it could be helpful. I love your insight. Thank you.
Well, Amy, I think, the overview is great. And again, if you're seeing this for the first time, Amy's been wonderful and very communicative. So we'll absolutely share her contact information here at the bottom of the screen to get in touch. And want to come back to and circle back to, as we wrap up, just this idea or this new opportunity, I should say, not idea, this new opportunity of our partnership with PAIU, which is the collection of intermediate units across Pennsylvania, in our new pricing agreement that helps, level the playing field for all districts to access, such a powerful platform.
If you think about all the tools that you're using, right, and even all the time that's embedded in your tech team supporting them and training your teachers, this gives you a way to consolidate all of those into one vendor, one cost. There's an implementation fee the first year. It's really minimal, but we also include all your onboarding, all your training, all your resources. We do a launch kit, and the launch kit isn't even, where to point and click. That's pretty simple. I can watch a 3-minute video on how to create a post and off I go. Or I could do a 2-minute video on how to do direct messaging, right? Super simple. But a lot of the professional developments around best practices, or what's the difference between communication and family engagement, or how to look at your analytics in that dashboard to maybe drive some of the messaging you're using or some of the changes in practice. So all of that is included in that price, that per student price. Yeah, a unified platform for communication, focusing on family engagement is what we do and what we do really well.
Great. No, and I agree. And I think it's one of the reasons why, that data would be so helpful, because if you've unified all that under one umbrella, so too is your data going to come back unified for you to interpret and make informed decisions. So, well, I really appreciate you joining us. Excited about the MCIU agreement and the PAIU agreement that we can offer ParentSquare, an affordable rate and people can get their hands on it. So thanks for joining me today.
Good. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And I look forward to all your questions moving forward.
Yeah. So again, if this is your first Talking EdTech, here's my contact information. Here's Amy's contact information. Please feel free to shoot either of us an email if you have a question. Amy's been great through my own internal knowledge about this platform and our program. So I know that she's going to be of great service to you as a sales representative. But even from a high level IU perspective, if you're just kind of batting around your ideas, you want more information, please reach out to me. Happy to touch base and give you my viewpoints if they didn't address them here. And once again, this is Talking EdTech, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.